Hi students, how are you? In last class, we were discussing about the fertilization in human beings. And we saw that fertilization in human beings are taking place inside the mother's body, and that is in the oviduct. Fusion of male gamete and female gamete is taking place inside the oviduct that is present inside the mother's body. So fertilization that take place inside the female body is called internal fertilization. So that is taking place inside the body. So that fertilization is called internal fertilization. Internal fertilization occurs in many animals including humans, cows, dogs, etc. But we can see that in many animals, fertilization takes place outside the body of the female. And that type of fertilization that takes place outside the body of female is called external fertilization. So if fusion of male and female gamete is taking place outside the body, that is called external fertilization. And in external fertilization, fertilization takes place in water. Okay. Have you seen frogs' eggs? Clusters of frogs' eggs floating in water in ponds or slow flowing streams during rainy seasons. Have you seen it? So during spring or rainy season, frogs and toads move to ponds. Then when the male and female come together in water, the female lays hundreds of eggs. We know the eggs of birds are covered by a hard shell. But frogs' eggs are not covered by a hard shell. It is soft and delicate, and a layer of jelly-like substance holds the egg together. So all the eggs are held together by a jelly-like substance, and it provides protection to the eggs. So it is not covered by hard shell, it is covered by a jelly-like substance. And egg is soft and delicate, and we can see they are laying these eggs in water. So it is not covered by hard outer shell. In human beings, we know that sperms are deposited inside the female body, and their sperms will move towards the ovum that is in the oviduct, and fusion is taking place or fertilization is taking place inside the oviduct. But in frogs, we saw that the female frogs are laying down the unfertilized eggs in the water. And as the eggs are laid, the male deposits sperms over them. So the males are depositing the sperms over the eggs that is laid in the water, not inside the body of the female. And each sperm swims randomly in water. When the sperms are ejected out, they will swim in water with the help of its long tail. And the sperm come in contact with the eggs and fusion takes place. So the eggs and sperms fuse together in the water. This results in fertilization. And this type of fertilization, in which the fusion of a male and female gamete takes place outside the body of a female, is called external fertilization. And we can see external fertilization not only in frog, we can see in fish, starfish and all. External fertilization is taking place. So the female will lay egg in water and male will deposit the sperms over the eggs, and fusion takes place in water. We know hen or birds, they lay only one egg at a time. But here in the case of this fish and frog, we can see that they will lay hundreds of eggs at a time. Why they are laying down hundreds of eggs at a time? What is the reason? Though these animals lay hundreds of eggs and release millions of sperms, all the eggs do not get fertilized and develop into new individuals. Why? This is because the eggs and sperms, they are deposited in water. They get exposed to water movement, wind and rainfall. So, even if hundreds of eggs are laid, millions of sperms are released, but all these eggs will not be fused together because of rainfall and wind and water movement. And also there are other animals in the pond which may feed on the eggs. Thus, production of large number of eggs and sperms is necessary to ensure fertilization of at least a few of them. So even if hundreds of eggs are laid at a time, all the eggs will not be fertilized. Some eggs will be eaten by some other animals in the water and all. So only a few eggs will be fertilized at that time. Okay, so at a time, this fish and frog, they are laying out more than hundreds of eggs. We learned that due to the fusion of male and female gamete during fertilization, a single cell called zygote is formed. Now, how this single cell become a big individual? So, our next topic is development of embryo. So, this single celled zygote begin to divide repeatedly. So, we saw that fusion of male and female gamete takes place. Ovum fuses with the nucleus of ovum and sperm fuses together to form a single nucleus, so that it fused together to form a single cell called zygote. Okay. And what happened to this single cell? This single cell zygote begin to divide repeatedly. So it will begin to divide. So this single cell will begin to divide 2, 4, 8. Like that it will begin to divide into many cells, and during that time it will begin to move towards the uterus. So it will begin to divide into many cells, and it form a ball of many cells. Okay. These cells then begin to form groups that develop into different tissues and organs of the body. So the single cell zygote begin to divide into many cells, and we study that cells join together to form tissues into organs. So the cells, it will divide into many cells, and cells begin to form tissues and organs. And this dividing structure or developing structure is termed as embryo. So this dividing, when it is single cell, we call it as zygote. When it divides into many cells, then we call it as embryo. Okay. So during division, this embryo begin to move towards the uterus. Then it will come and stick to the wall of the uterus and begin to grow into a baby. So it stick to the wall of the uterus, and its further development takes place inside the uterus. Okay. So this developing structure is termed as embryo. So the zygote divides to form embryo, and the embryo gets embedded in the wall of the uterus for further development. So it begins to develop slowly inside the uterus. The embryo continues to develop in the uterus. So it begins to develop body parts such as hands, legs, heads, eyes, ears, etc. So what happens? Day by day, the embryo begin to grow slowly, and it begin to develop all the body parts. The stage of the embryo in which all the body parts can be identified, then that stage is called fetus. So first, when it is a single cell, it is called zygote. And what happened to the zygote? Zygote begins to divide into many cells. Then we call it as embryo. Then later, after a few months, it will develop body parts, head, hand, leg, everything, so that its body parts can be identified. At that stage, it is called as a fetus. Fetus. Okay. So the single celled zygote divides into many cells and forms the embryo. Then embryo develops the body parts, and then it is called as the fetus. Okay, so zygote develop into embryo, and embryo develop into fetus. And inside the uterus, the exchange of nutrients, oxygen and waste products between the embryo and the mother takes place through a structure called placenta. So that all you can study in detail next year. Okay. And the average duration of human pregnancy is about 9 months and 7 days. So after that, when the development of the fetus is complete, the mother gives birth to the baby also. Okay. We saw that frogs are laying eggs and they have external fertilization. And what about hens and birds? They are also laying eggs. So what about their fertilization? Is it external or internal? We can see fertilization in hen or birds are internal fertilization. But they are not giving birth to babies like humans or cows. So then how the chicks are born? Fertilization in the birds or hen is that is inside the body. So it is internal. So like human beings, fertilization is taking place in the oviducts of the hen. Okay. So this is the ovary of a hen and you can see oviduct coming out from connected with to the ovary. And fertilization takes place here inside the oviduct. So sperms will move towards the ovum and fertilization takes place inside the oviduct. Then after fertilization, the fertilized cell will move through this oviduct, and when it is moving through the oviduct, many layers develop around it. So you can see egg white, albumin and all get deposited around the egg. And again when it moves, we can see a hard shell is developed around the egg, and after that egg is laid out by the hen also. Okay, so soon after fertilization, the zygote soon after fertilization, the zygote divides repeatedly and it travels down through the oviduct. And when it is traveling down, many protective layers are formed around it. So many layers are formed around it, and the hard shell that we see in a hen's egg is one such protective layer. So many layers develop around the zygote and then it is laid out also. And here we saw hard shell is developed around the developing embryo. After that, the hen lays the egg. And after laying the egg, the embryo takes about 3 weeks or about 21 days to develop into a chick. And this embryo can develop into a chick only when sufficient heat is given. Otherwise, after laying the egg, if you collect and keep it somewhere else, it won't develop into a chick. Only if for 21 days sufficient warmth is given, then only the eggs will hatch out and chicks will come out. So that is why the hen, after laying eggs for a few days or a short period of time, it stops laying the egg. And after that, the hen will begin to sit on the eggs to provide sufficient warmth. And after 3 weeks, we can see the eggs hatch out. So, when sufficient warmth is provided, development of the chick takes place inside the eggshell, and within 21 days, eggs hatch out. That is, after the complete development of chick, it bursts open the eggshell and come out. So, the chicks will come out. And nowadays, farmers are hatching large number of eggs in incubator also. So there the eggs are kept at a high temperature at all times. So temperature and humidity inside the incubators are the crucial factors for successfully hatching out the eggs. So we saw how the embryo is developed in the uterus of a mother, or how the embryo development takes place inside the shell of hen and all. Now, what about the development of embryo in animals which undergo external fertilization? In animals which undergo external fertilization, development of the embryo takes place outside the female body. So after laying the egg, fusion takes place, and after that, development of the embryo takes place. It also takes place outside the body. And the embryo continue to grow within their egg coverings. But it is not covered with a hard outer covering, only a jelly-like covering is there. So inside that, the embryo will begin to develop. And after the embryos develop, the eggs hatch out and tadpoles. In the case of frog, we can see tadpoles come out. And you must have seen tadpoles swimming in ponds. So in next class, we can study the life cycle of a frog also. Clear now? Okay, bye.